Welcome to Tomorrow's Cities podcast, a series of conversations on urbanization and disaster risk reduction created by the Tomorrow Cities Hub, a 5-year interdisciplinary research project working internationally to foster a transition from crisis management to multi-hazard risk-informed urban planning in cities of the Global South. In this episode, Thaisa Comelli facilitates a discussion with Tomorrow Cities partners from Nepal who have worked across Kathmandu and Rapti. Together, Dilli Poudel from the Southasia Institute of Advanced Studies, Vibek Manandhar, Rajani Prajapati from the National Society for Earthquake Technology, and Basanta Adhikari from the Tribhuvan Institute of Engineering explore what it means to plan cities, engaging with long-term thinking and future visioning methodologies. Using the case of Rapti and this designation as the new capital of Lumbini Province as a point of departure, the team reflects on how rapid urbanization and climate change are transforming local communities, reshaping space, and influencing natural hazard risks in the region. They highlight how community-led approaches, risk-informed tools, capacity building, and bespoke hazard and impact assessments can help shape a more resilient future.
My name is Thaisa Comelli, and I'm the Social Sciences Coordinator and Technical Lead of Tomorrow Cities, and I will be your host for today's episode. Today we're traveling to Nepal, a wonderful place with valuable heritage, rich culture, and breathtaking landscapes. I've been there, it's amazing. Nepal is famous for its mountains, but also for its natural hazard-related risks. If you remember, a massive earthquake hit Nepal in 2015, leading to a series of damages and physical, human, and environmental losses. Besides earthquakes, Nepal is also exposed to other natural hazards such as floods, landslides, and other events connected to urbanization and climate change. This is why Tomorrow Cities is working in Nepal. We're working in two places: in Kathmandu, the capital, in a district called Kokana. This was one of the first cities that partnered with us around 2019. And we're also working in the Rapti Valley between 2022 and 2024. Today, I have with me, with a lot of pleasure, 4 colleagues from different institutions in Nepal. We have Vibek Manandhar. My apologies in advance if I mispronounce your names or surnames, and please feel free to correct later. So I have Vibek Manandhar with me, and Rajani Prajapati. They're both from the National Society for Earthquake Technology and SAT. I have also Dilli Poudel from the Southasia Institute of Advanced Studies, and I have Basanta Adhikari from the Institute of Engineering at the Tribhuvan University. So today we're going to discuss what does it really mean to plan for the future? And we're going to use these 2 case studies from Nepal as points of departure for our reflections. To make things easier for everyone who is listening, and so everyone can understand what we're talking about, we will be mostly talking about the work in Rapti, which is an area in the west of Nepal marked by rural and peri-urban lands. Rapti is expecting rapid urbanization now due to its designation as the capital of the Lumbini Province in 2020. Changes are happening fast, with a new master plan being developed and revised, and the land pooling scheme which is supporting those changes. So Tomorrow Cities is informing this process through its participatory, risk-informed, and future-oriented tools. And that's a very, very brief introduction for me, because I will let my colleagues introduce themselves and Rapti and their work in Nepal to you now. So, Dilli, I'm going to start with you. Can you please introduce yourself and give us a little bit of detail about the early work that we did in Rapti, who we engaged with, who we talked to, and why?
Thank you, Thaisa, and thank you for having me on this podcast. Firstly, let me introduce myself, then I will move on to the Rapti experiences. I am Dilli Poudel, and I completed my master's in geography from Tribhuvan University, Nepal. And I completed my MPhil and PhD in human geography from University of Bergen, Norway. Currently, I'm affiliated with Southasia Institute of Advanced Studies as a senior researcher, and I'm leading urban and disaster theme at CIAS. And also, I'm engaging with forest management and local governance research network. Regarding Rapti, It is a newly declared capital city of the Lumbini Province of Nepal government, which was declared on 6 October 2020. After the declarations of the capital city, the provincial government formed the Provincial Infrastructure Development Authority, which we call shortly PIDA, to plan, design, and develop the capital city in the valley. So we started communicating with PIDA and local authorities as it was the perfect location for tomorrow city's research activities. There were mainly two reasons why PIDA also wanted us to engage with them. Firstly, although the PIDA had already proposed a master plan for the capital city development, there were concerns from communities regarding land pooling. Land pooling is a method of land use planning where the PIDA pools both private and public land, propose land use development such as residential area, industrial area, agriculture zone, etc., and return the remaining land to the owner. Although the communities were happy about the capital city development there, when they knew about the actual land pooling, they turned suspicious about giving their land for the city development. So conflict between authorities, PIDA, and the communities emerged there. PIDA thought that tomorrow city's engagement would be instrumental for them not only to share positive messages about their activities and land pooling activities, but also to use tomorrow city's finding to revise the master plan. Secondly, the master plan lacked a detailed study about the local risks, although Rapti Valley is exposed to various hazards such as inundation, flood, landslide, and fire. Since the Tomorrow City project is about the risks, PIDA thought our finding would help them to revise the master plan considering the local risks. The PIDA also ensured us that they would revise the master plan based on our finding. So we agreed and signed the memorandum of understanding in May 2023, and it started the Tomorrow Cities Decision Support Environment, shortly TCDSE, which also a method of Tomorrow Cities research and engagement activities in cities. Immediately after the engagement, the social scientist team started engaging with communities and local authorities such as ward official, municipal official, and PIDA official, and identifying communities for TCDSE workshop and engagement. Since the Rapti Valley is a huge area covering 485 square kilometer and more than 75,000 population, different types of caste, ethnic, and indigenous community live there. So it took us some time to know social and local risk context. With rigorous fieldwork and help from social mobilizer and local authorities and other Tomorrow Cities member, we succeeded in identifying 5 community groups and 1 group of local planner and authorities. In total, we selected 6 groups comprising the Tharu groups, migrant group, the ethnic group, the Madhesi Muslim and Dalit group, squatter group, and the planner group. The Tharu group was selected as they are an indigenous community comprising about 41% of the total Rapti population. The ethnic group live and represent surrounding hill community, so we selected them to represent the hill population. The selection of migrant group had 2 reasons: is they are not only an influential community in terms of access to the local economy and politics, but also there is a high potential of increasing migrant population in the future. So having their thought was very important in the TCDSE. The Madhesi Muslim and Dalit group represented the minority and marginalized community of the valley, so we selected them to not miss out the marginal voices. Since the issues related to squatter and informality is one of the major issue of the valley, and their population was also increasing, having them in the Tomorrow Cities and TCDSE activity was very important to foresee not only the future scenario but also solution to the problem related to informality, marginality, and squatter. Finally, the planner and authority group was selected to understand their views on future capital city and also to listen to communities' voices so they will be able to translate communities' vision into plan. Finally, we succeeded in bringing disaggregated communities' voices into local planning, which were also appreciated by the Provincial Infrastructure Development Authority, PITA, and local authorities, and they agreed to include community voices in local planning and future city development. I think it makes clear, Thaisa. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dilli. That was such a comprehensive description of the process. And I particularly appreciated the fact that we did not only support a better communication between PITA, the local authority, and the local community, but as we will talk more in today's episode, these visions, these scenarios, these ideas about the future produced by those communities, they were in fact used to inform the revision of the master plans. We will talk about that today. But before I move on to other colleagues, I'd like to stay with you, Dilli, for one more second and ask you about this idea of planning for the future, because you were just describing about the logic for the selection of the groups. And just some context also for those who are listening to us, a key part of the Tomorrow Cities methodology involves future thinking, right? So we embed ourselves in the future throughout the whole process, planning not for ourselves, for the specific communities that we represent, but for someone like us, someone like those groups in the future. So there is a logic of intergenerational justice that comes at play here. And that is slightly different from conventional participatory methodologies. So Dilli, can you tell me, how do you think, in your opinion, that this future focus of the hub and its methodology influenced the way in which the Nepal team approached the selection of the groups, and how it influenced the discussions and the outputs, the products that we saw?
Thank you, Thaisa. Again, it's a very good questions and very relevant as well. Actually, the approach was quite influential for us, for Nepal team. The learning from Kokana was also instrumental in advancing this approach in Rapti. But it took a bit of time to translate that into Rapti case, as we needed to convince communities how to think, considering the future of their land, family, and the community as large. For this, the hub approach facilitated us in two ways mainly. The first one is, compared to the traditional participative approach, the hub approach was a novel idea in planning, especially city planning. So it allowed us to engage with multiple communities, hear their voices, identify representative groups from the area, and include all voices in local city planning. Earlier, urban planners' engagement with community was ritual and just for formality, let's say. The hub approach was also new for local authorities and planner, which later they agreed to apply it in local capital city of Brand. So it was very effective in that sense. Second, after the selection of the disaggregated group and before the implementation of the future visioning workshop, the first workshop we organized in Rapti, we met all the disaggregated groups separately and introduced TCDSC and what would happen in the workshop in the coming days. We did this because the hub participatory and co-production approach had flexibility to how to engage with communities, considering local social and geographical context, cultural context. So our engagement with community before the formal workshop substantially increase community confidence in sharing their thought during engagement with various workshops under TCDSC. We believe that because of this flexibility and hub approach, community could able to share their thought ideas openly compared to other methods we adopted in the past. Thank you.
Thank you, Dilli. It's great that you emphasize the importance of building trust with local communities, especially because we have this role of being a bridge to some extent, between government and community groups. Now, we are talking a little bit about the social engagement side of Tomorrow Cities, which is a strong one, and it cuts through the whole process of engagement. But we know that Tomorrow Cities also has some very sophisticated technical components. So how to articulate these two, the social and the technical? And to answer that question, I'm now going to move to Vibek, so we can talk a little bit about the value of bringing communities' voices into the technical work and having iterations also. So Vibek, could you introduce yourself and reflect on that topic while also mentioning mentioning any challenges that you see on the technical side of the Tomorrow Cities work in Nepal, in Rapti, in Kokana, whatever you wish to talk about.
Thank you very much, Thaisa. First of all, I thank you for inviting me in this podcast and letting us the opportunity to talk about our experiences working in tomorrow cities. For everyone who is listening, my name is Vibek Manandhar. I'm a structural engineer by background. I obtained my master's degree in civil engineering seismic design from University College London, UK. And I also have a master's degree in construction management from Tribhuvan University, Nepal. In tomorrow cities, I was primarily involved in physical infrastructure impact. That is a field of translating physical infrastructure impact into social impact. And I was also responsible in leading the team at NSET as the project manager for Tomorrow Cities. And I was also the lead for developing a dedicated module for physical and social impact in Tomorrow Cities, which is a part of the capacity strengthening program. Now, answering Thaisa's question on how we translated these community aspirations that were collected in the first stage of Tomorrow Cities into these interactive visualizations. So before I start on that, the way we thought of this stage while we were constructing the Tomorrow Cities Decision Support Environment, the TCTSE, was the people should be able to visualize their cities that is presented in an actionable and detailed scenario. So in the first stage, people were able to put their dreams and aspirations into paper. So they literally drew what they thought their city would look like. Now, translating these visions into these legitimate plans was essential. So what we did was we had a team of technical personnel, including urban planners, architects, engineers, and also social scientists, who worked together to bringing these dreams and visions into realistic maps, I would say. So while doing that, the team studied the aspirations, the raw drawings that the community, these 6 disaggregated community groups presented, and they studied various policies. They went through a lot of discussions in the existing policy databases and what can be the future policies that the community can envisage. And now, based on this, the team worked in 2 stages in translating these aspirations into these legitimized, digitized maps. So in the first stage, they digitized whatever the community presented in the first stage of the project. And in the second stage, they refined those visions using GIS into these very detailed maps that were complete with different land uses. For example, there were different zones for agriculture, residence, commercial purposes, or there were these definite zones defined for industrial use. So in the interactions, in the workshops that we had with the community also had a very good chance to really learn that, okay, the future city must have these segregated zones to be more efficient and for the city to be more resilient towards disaster. So that was also a very good opportunity for the community to learn from these technical team as well. So while we were developing those plans, we also were very careful in including as much detailed from their aspirations as possible into these maps. For example, we had to include these very specific things like pottery museums that would reflect the very cultural aspect of the indigenous communities in the region. For example, the Tharu community is very well known for their pottery heritage. So things like that, we had to be very careful in meticulously incorporating them into the master plan. And as you mentioned, there were some challenges while we were translating these aspirations into the visioning scenarios as well. For example, while we project these scenarios into the future for 30 or 50 years, we have to have some basis in doing that. And for that, we basically primarily rely on data, the past data, and how, for example, the population is increasing. But when you are designing cities so meticulously, you don't have data for anything and everything. So then you have to rely on, for example, key informant interviews, focus group discussions to achieve a subjective idea of how the future might look like. So that was particularly challenging in our case. And the other challenges faced during our interactions in the workshops were challenges in communicating these technical aspects to the community, because naturally, these core technical things in urban planning, it's very difficult for the community to grasp in the first go. So it needed very rigorous planning and training amongst the tomorrow's cities personnel to really practice on how we talk to the community and how we deliver these very complex concepts in a language that they can understand, so that we get the maximum feedback from their side so that we could incorporate it in our work. So those were the two challenges that I can think of right now.
Thank you so much, Vibek. I really enjoyed the examples that you provided. They're quite useful for us to grasp the Rapti context. And I also like that you used the word legitimacy to talk about this process, because when we talk about future thinking, one might believe that this is just an imagination exercise, an experiment, because communities are producing visions and urban scenarios for the next 30, 50 years. So this is usually the timeline that we use in Tomorrow's Cities. But in fact, there is a very sophisticated work here so that these visions and scenarios are feasible. They're not only desirable, but also, things that we can use to talk about actual planning challenges and trade-offs and so on. And that grants legitimacy to this bottom-up process. It's not just a wish list for the future. It's something that is really realistic, and there's a lot of thinking behind that. So thank you so much for that comprehensive description of the process and for your reflections about challenges. Now, I would like to stay a little bit longer on the technical side of the work and actually delve deeper into that, because we have Basanta with us, and Basanta knows a lot about the hazard context in Rapti and in Nepal. So Basanta, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about those hazards, the hazards faced by the Rapti Valley in Nepal more broadly, if you wish? And I'm particularly interested to know if you think that these hazards are expected to change too much towards the future, and to what extent is this influenced by expected rapid urbanization, or to what extent do you think this is influenced by climate change?
Thank you, Thaisa. So pleasure to be here. My name is Basanta Adhikari. I'm working as a professor at Institute of Engineering, Tribhuvan University. Currently working as a director at Center for Disaster Studies, where I do research on disaster in different spectrum of disaster risk reduction and management. So by training, I am a geohazard specialist working on landslide, flood, seismotectonics in the Himalayas. So let me start. It's quite interesting conversation, but let me start about the hazard scenarios in Nepal. So Himalaya is a very young mountain. So mountain building process is still on. So that's why we have lots of earthquakes in the Himalayas. So, and then nowadays, due to the climate change, the monsoon pattern has been already changed. So we have been experiencing different kind of extreme events due to climate change, as well as the earthquakes and the mountain movement. So that's why if you look in international disaster scenarios, Nepal is quite facing different kind of hazards, including landslide, flood, earthquakes, heat waves, cold waves, lightning, and you can count on a count. So we can say that Nepal is a shopping center for disasters. So that's why we have been facing lots of challenges. It's not only about the hazard. These hazards are turning into the disasters because of the human activities and urbanization and others. If you read the World Bank report, many people, more than 50% people will migrate from rural to urban areas by 2060, right? So in that context, the Rapti Valley, where we have been working and we have worked, and I'm one of the few scientists who is working since the beginning of this Tomorrow Cities project. So that's why we have designed this project to understand the physical conditions, social conditions, and then political conditions to prepare the future cities. In that context, as you rightly said, that Rapti Valley is located in the midland. So it's between the mountains, it's a valley, and we have a Rapti River flowing. So Rapti Valley, the settlement is along left and right bank of the Rapti Valley. So we have been facing lots of hazards, for example, flooding, landslides, and then, of course, as I already mentioned, some earthquakes. And another very important thing here I would like to mention is the forest fire and then the drought. And drought is a very slow onset of disaster, but people are facing because Nepal is an agriculture-based country, so people are relying on their livelihood on agriculture. So this slow onset of disaster also actually contributing lots of damages in people's livelihood. So these events are happening. So they were there, but the challenge and the more important for us is that these events are accelerating. So events are increasing and the extent of the damage is increasing. So that's why, as I already mentioned, due to the climate change in the Himalayas, the temperature are increasing. And then the rainfall pattern, in the past, we used to have a long monsoon, like 2 months or 1 month, or continuous rainfall for 15 days. But now we have a very intense rainfall, but for like 2 or 3 days. And so rest of the monsoon we didn't have rainfall. So these extreme events, not only in the monsoon, but also in the winter season, we have a very dry winter. So this dry and wet winter and the summer actually triggering lots of hazards. So, this warmer temperature not only change the extremes, but also it change or affect the people's livelihood. So they just want to move just near to the rivers. And in the monsoon, again, these extreme temperature or extreme event bring the flooding. So there's a consequences between the urbanization and the hazard events in that particular area. Why this is important? Because Rapti is proposed or already being constructed as a provincial capital city of Nepal. So people are moving from or migrating from rural to urban area, that place. And so the exposure element will increase in future. When the exposure element increases, for example, people or the infrastructures, buildings, for example, they will move to the flood prone areas, and it can lead the problem in the future. Not only that, it can create the environmental degradation that we have to really think about. So if you listen all these consequences, things, how people are living. So in my point of view and in my experiences, the climate change further increase the urban temperature, what we call urban heat island. The temperature increase within the particular urban areas that directly affect the people's livelihood and agriculture and so on. So that's why, in my point of view, these hazards will be increased, the temperature will increase, and the consequences will be different, what we are thinking. And so that's why you have designed different probabilistic scenarios, what would be what would happen in the futures in that particular Rapti Valley. Thank you, Thaisa.
Thank you, Basanta. Wow, that was a real lesson on multi-hazard risk in Nepal. And I particularly appreciate the emphasis on the roles played by urbanization and its interplay with climate change. That was super clear. And for those listening, if you follow the Tomorrow Cities work already, you will have heard one key aspect of what Basanta said, which is the fact that natural hazards turn into disasters because of our decisions. Hazards can be natural to some extent, but disasters are not. They are a product of our decision making. And that is why Tomorrow Cities is working to improve the way in which those decisions are made. That's the point of us being here, working together. Now, on this topic about changing the way in which we make decisions, I would like to move to a discussion about impact and lessons, which is so important for us. And I know that, the Nepal team has been so successful in that area. So we're going to be talking soon about institutional-led impact with you, Rajani. But before that, I would just like to quickly grab Vibek again and talk about impact in terms of awareness raising and learning, because you were just talking about the importance of bringing the community's views into the technical work. But there's another side to that, which is communicating the technical work to the communities and also generating a process of collective learning based on that. So in your opinion, Vibek, very quickly, what is the value that you see when it comes to the learning of the impacts of those potential future hazards? Because Basanta was describing, how natural hazards create impacts, and that's those impacts is how we evaluate risk from different perspectives. So, what is the value of that, and how does that happen? How did it happen in Rapti and in Nepal, Vibek?
Yes, it's definitely extremely important that we communicate the impacts of these hazards that Dr. Basanta very clearly mentioned that exist in Rapti. So while we study these hazards and these extreme events and the extents in which they bestow their wrath in our villages, in our cities, it's also very important to accurately, to the best of our abilities, to assess the impact that they have in physical infrastructure and also the impact that they have consequently on the lives of the people. And while we communicate that, it's also very important that we do that in a language that the community understands. So when we choose the metrics on how we present these impact results, it's very important that we tailor these metrics to the place where we are communicating these results. For example, if we have a city that heavily relies on agriculture, the inundation of farms may be a very relevant impact metrics for them. Or a city which heavily relies on tourism, for example, can take the damage caused to hotels, for example, can be a very important impact that they care about. So you have to tailor these metrics to the community as well. And while we were developing these metrics for Rapti, we took a lot of lessons from what we did at Kokana and in Kathmandu as well. So we had a gathering amongst people from different communities, and we studied what are the metrics that they care about, what do they consider as being a very high impact to their community. So that study was very useful for us in tailoring these relevant metrics to Rapti. So although we had a very detailed study, the results that came out of that gathering or the workshop was not very surprising, because a lot of people care about drinking water. A lot of people care about people losing their lives, obviously. And a lot of people also cared about losing their jobs or being homeless. So we chose these metrics to then communicate with the people in Rapti. So we developed a dashboard, which was very interactive and simple to use. And we use this dashboard. We train our personnel how to use it, and we tailored everything that we did in Tomorrow Cities around this dashboard, so that all the results that we calculated were presentable in the application. And when we went back to the community, we held these very comprehensive trainings for the community people as well, so that they could go into the dashboard and see what is the impact of these different hazards like flood, landslides, and earthquakes that causes damage or impact to their social life. So it was very useful in the sense that people got to see in numbers and colors of how these disasters affect their lives. And that consequently led to a very informed decision this time. So now people were able to have a risk-informed decisions, which is one of the key pillars of the Tomorrow Cities project. So they were now able to propose policies and actions based on this risk-informed discussion. So it is very important that people know the impact of these disasters in as much detail as possible.
Thank you, Vibek. Indeed, this is a beautiful part of the Tomorrow Cities work. So this idea of measuring impact and creating a definition of risk collectively and in a language and through metrics that matter to people. So not, top-down metrics of financial loss and damage, but things that people really relate to. That's really important. Now, I would like to move to a discussion about institutional impact. So, for example, impact that is related to the building of local capacities for urban planning and hazard assessment, the things that we are talking about, and the influence that this whole process has to the master plan. So in the case of Rapti, if you remember, we're trying to inform the master plan that is attached to this movement of the capital of the Lumbini Province. So Rajani, I would like to talk to you now about that topic. So can you talk a little bit about the capacity strengthening work that runs as a kickoff and also in parallel to this whole process that we are describing? And I would like to know in particular, in your opinion, what is the importance of building local capacities? How do you think that our partners on the ground, our partners in Rapti, benefit from this work? And just a note for those who are listening, it's important to mention here that all of our recent partner cities, not only Rapti, have experienced the capacity strengthening work. So this goes beyond Rapti. So Rajani, please introduce yourself and talk a little bit about capacity strengthening.
Thank you, Thaisa. Hello, everyone. This is Rajani Prajapati. I'm currently working at LSET, and my professional background is structural engineer, and also I'm looking after the training division at LSET in the Tomorrow Cities project itself. I'm working as a capacity strengthening expert and also looking after the impact part in Rapti City. So today I'm going to talk in brief about the capacity strengthening part of the project, which is one of the valuable outcome of the project. So when the Tomorrow Cities program team was developing the innovative concept of the TCDSE, Tomorrow Cities Decision Support Environment, so they realized, they recognized that it is essential to develop the capacity strengthening course on this concept on TCDSE, so that we can inform and even train the Tomorrow Cities, the city partners and the city professionals who are working in the planning and development of the city and also in the DRR sectors. This will broaden their knowledge on TCDSE, and also it will help the project itself to implement it more effectively in the city. And additionally, it is a very effective approach towards institutionalizing the TCDSE concept, so that it can sustain and expand in more cities in future. And so, talking about the content of this course, as already mentioned, it is based on the TCDSE concept. So, it majorly has 4 different modules based on the 4 major stages of the process, and namely the future visioning scenario development, multi-hazard physical and social impact assessment, and finally risk agreement. So those course has been developed with the standard curricula, and though it was developed under the leadership of NSET, but all international team of the project, they have provided their valuable contribution in development of the course and also delivery of the course. So far, we have delivered this course uh, in all of the currently Tomorrow Cities working cities like Rapti in Nepal and in Nablus, Palestine, and in Bangladesh cities like Chittagong and Cox's Bazar, and also in Dar es Salaam of Tanzania. So, as I mentioned, the participants of the training were mostly from the local authority, from the government officials, those working in city planning and development and TRR sectors. For example, they were from the wards and municipalities, and even from PIDA, which we call Provincial Infrastructure Development Authority. And those professionals, they were trained in this all four modules. And so we think that they provided very positive feedback, and so we are assured that they will use all of them, or even the part of the training, the knowledge they gain from training, especially the participatory approach and the multi-hazard consideration in risk-informed planning. Those aspects, we expect that they will use them in their works in future regarding the city planning and even other relevant projects. And since they belong to the local authorities, we can also uh, ensure that they can advocate to include the concepts of the TCDSC in policy and guidelines related to the uh, city planning.
Thank you, Rajani. Just a clarification for those who are listening and not familiar with Tomorrow Cities before we continue. Rajani mentioned at some points the acronym TCDSE, which stands for Tomorrow Cities Decision Support Environment. And this is the framework that we work with our partner cities. And this decision support environment has a series of stages, as Rajani described, and they're all unpacked in the capacity strengthening work that we offer. So Rajani, before we wrap up on this discussion about the support that we offer the institutions that partner with us so they can continue the work and reflect about the work, can you give us some concrete examples about what you described? So for example, special or unique things that you believe that people, those authorities, those planners that engage with us, what do you think they picked up and learned from this process?
Sure. We have conducted the training in many cities working with the project. So I would like to share some examples from the Rapti city trainings. And the most, even in all cities, if we talk about all cities, the participant most likely they connected to the future visioning module, which is the participatory approach engagement of community in risk-informed city planning. And this was very well received by the participants. And in one of the in training of Rapti, one of the participants, as a concluding remark, mentioned that the land pooling issues, as mentioned by Dilli earlier, which was the current ongoing issue in Rapti, he mentioned that if the training like this, training that involve the participatory approach, if it would have been provided in the land pooling case also, it would have, the problem would have solved. So they appreciated the method, and they also requested for to train other community people on this, so that they can easily understand and feel that they are also the part of the planning.
Thank you, Rajani. It's really helpful that you highlighted how this future visioning component in particular, which is a future version of participatory planning, of course, I'm summarizing here, but how it can help in the negotiation of local conflicts. And in this case of Rapti, the land pooling scheme was one of the key sources of conflict. And we're not trying to reach consensus, but we are trying to foster healthy negotiations and transparent negotiations between community groups and authorities. Thank you very much. That was really, really helpful. So to wrap up this discussion about impact, I would just like to ask you, Vibek, one more question. Because I know that you have been quite involved in these discussions with the authorities and policymakers, which is part of the Tomorrow Cities work to change the way in which we make decisions on the ground. So Can you talk a little bit about the plans for impact in Rapti? So what do you think are the biggest achievements in terms of impact and things that the team is mostly proud of?
So the biggest impact that we were able to have in Rapti is, of course, the improved master plan of the capital of Lumbini Province. As you mentioned, we always try and focus on fostering discussions instead of imposing a doctrine of a method. But in Rapti, we were very successful in fostering such a qualitative and constructive discussions in different levels of stages, participated by not only the people, but also the planners and authorities of the province, that we were very successful within the time frame to produce a risk-informed and participatory master plan at the end, and were also able to submit it to the implementing authority. And this was endorsed by the provincial government and also owned by the implementing authority, which is the authority that is going to actually implement the master plan in the field. And the notable thing was that it was also endorsed and owned by the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Authority. So that was quite a huge achievement for the project that the whole team is really, really proud of. And of course, starting from the beginning, as Dilli mentioned, the whole scenario before the project came about in the region was very different, with people not being very clear on the role that PETA has in implementing the master plan, or the doubts that they had on the topic of land pooling. So that was also one of the big achievements of the project, that the CEO of the implementing authority is also very thankful, I can say, to the project and to the whole team. And during the course of Tomorrow Cities, we also had many events there with the local communities during festivals, or there were some events that we interacted with the students, like we organized an art competition. We used one of the festivals in Nepal as an opportunity to organize a creative competition, like a songwriting and a dance competition that was themed around disaster risk reduction and thinking of a disaster resilient future, Rapti. So these events also helped us communicate to the community better. So we could also take that as one of the things that helped us engage with the community. And during one of the events in particular, I remember we went there on the occasion of Earthquake Safety Day, where we were able to bring all the stakeholders working in the province that work in the field of disaster risk reduction to sign a pledge saying that they will work together in ensuring that the future of Rapti is disaster resilient. So we had all the stakeholders, including the 3 municipalities in the region. We had all the relevant ministries. We had the CEO of the implementing authority, PETA, and we also had representation from the Planning Commission. So that signing of the pledge was also one of the notable achievements of the project. And the implementing authority, we were able to build a very good rapport with them as well. And while they will now focus on developing a wider master plan of the whole region that encompasses the capital of Rapti again. So they have pledged that they will try and follow the same methodology as they followed for the master plan development for the capital in developing a wider master plan of the region. And we have also extended our support in whatever capacity possible in the future as well. So that is so I take these as very notable impacts that we were able to have in the region. Thaisa.
Thank you, Vibek. We know that master plans can be quite top-down planning tools, so it's really great to see how in Rapti we opened this process a little bit more, and we made it more future-oriented and risk-informed. And And now we're moving to the final part of the episode, and I would like to dwell on this future orientation a little bit longer. And now asking all my colleagues really a final question that relates to that topic, planning for the future and future thinking. So I would like to ask you about the most important lesson that you will take from this experience working in Kathmandu, working in Rapti, particularly in terms of future orientation. So thinking about 30, 50 years from now. So what does it take to really engage with future thinking? What do we need in terms of data, methods, partnerships, collaborations, the thinking process itself, which can be challenging? And what are the potentials and barriers to plan for long-term futures? Because it's different than planning for the short term. And I know these are lots of questions, so please feel free to touch on whatever resonates most to you. But the final one is, how is this process different from a conventional planning exercise that tries to plan, for, or that is constrained by those political cycles of every 5 years? So yeah, if anyone has thoughts on that future orientation of the Tomorrow Cities work and what have you learned and the lessons, feel free to share them now. And maybe I will invite Dilli to go first. Yeah, please, Dilli, go ahead and share your thoughts.
Yeah, thank you, Thaisa. Well, you have lots of questions there, but maybe I'll only take what we learned from these 5 years of engagement in both Kokana and Rapti cities. By the way, I have to admit here that these lessons actually are not only mine, but also with the other social scientists engaged with me in Kokana and Rapti. That I led the social science team in both Kokana and Rapti. So their ideas are also there. Well, broadly, I have categorized in 3 lessons. But the big achievement that Vibek mentioned, I fully agree that the perception about land pooling was completely changed toward the end of the Tomorrow Cities engagement in Rapti. Having said that, there are a couple of challenges which I'm going to categorize as lessons in 3 broad categories. First one is, that was also mentioned by someone previously, I think. The lack of data was a major challenge we experienced. Even local authority ward, they didn't have enough data related to especially land ownership and distributions. And they also didn't have enough data on local population distribution, especially the squatter and informal community, which actually very hard to kind of analyze local informality and marginality cases. So this can be one. This is the one of the challenge we experience, which can be even challenging in envisioning tomorrow's equitable cities, future equitable and resilient city. Second one was as we talk, we had a different group from different background with different socio-economic positionality, and they have different type of accesses. So there were different visions, and all visions may not be engineered and represented through constructional activities. So there might be some social issues, small community level constructions that might be missed out. For instance, we may focus more on constructing, a big construction, big large scale constructions, especially in those cities where budget is a major concerns. In that case, the small construction that favor community, for instance, a small maybe cultural spot for Tharu or some other community, those small part may be missed out when we are dealing with entire city planning. That may not be the case in Rapti, but there is a possibilities as you experience. I mean, as you learn. The third one is, although we selected the representative group to represent entire, Rapti Valley, but still, when we go to the workshop and interact with them, there were only one or two people they speak a lot, dominate other people. although sometimes they try to interact, but still, the domination was quite visible. Additionally, in all group, I observe, entire our team observe that female participation was there, sufficient person was there in all group. I think as we plan, but their voices, they are less vocal when they were sharing, ideas, thought about future city plan. So there is possibility of misrepresentation of these marginalized voices in city planning when you are thinking about kind of big, intensive, and integrated urban planning. Yeah, those are my thoughts. Thank you, Thaisa.
Thank you. Any other thoughts from colleagues before we wrap up this episode?
Yeah, I'll just share my experiences. Dilli sir has already mentioned so many things, but what I learned in this journey, Tomorrow's Cities, projects in Nepal. So, I'm a physical scientist. So in the beginning, it was a really hard time to understand the social scientist. So here in this project, so it was a really good environment to talk each other. So we understood each other. That's a really good part for me. And where we integrated our environmental, social, and then technological factors for tomorrow's cities. Another one is that I learned actually that integrating communities in the development stage of the program, what we call co-design, co-develop, and co-delivery principles. That was a fantastic learning. Having said that, we face lots of challenges. So data scarcity, data are not properly stored. It was really difficult to gather data, verify data, validate data. And then the unavailability of the technical human resources and even the technology in that Rapti area, and then of course the data integration and social inequality and others. And so in the futures, I'm pretty much sure that the Rapti Valley will face lots of challenges due to climate change, and that will exacerbate the scenarios in futures. But barriers are significant. But I would say that there is a potential for thriving and sustainable urban cities in Rapti area in futures. That's my opinion, what I learned from this Tomorrow Cities project. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Basanta. Vibek and Rajani, would you like to share some final thoughts on lessons?
Thaisa, personally, what I found is this program, the Tomorrow Cities, the concept, it is very comprehensive. And for the people like us who are mostly from the technical, the physical science background, I could learn many things on the social aspects also, and then combining the physical and social science together, and about the participatory approach, and then the future consideration while planning the city, and the risk-informed, multi-hazard risk-informed planning. Those were all collective. It comes collectively in this approach, which is very beautiful part of the project itself. And I think this is very important, not only for the currently the working cities, but we also need to expand this approach in new cities. So for this, maybe conducting more capacity strengthening program will be helpful. And regarding the challenge, what I personally feel is the social, the component, the participatory approach, those were very well received by the cities. But for the computational part, like the competition of the hazard and those concepts, still we lack the professionals who can conduct them in the local authority level. So maybe that is also we need to consider later.
Thank you, Rajani. So to finish with Vibek then.
I think the most valuable part of this whole project again was the human aspect, and how we really listen to the people who are actually going to live in the future city, instead of the conventional method of designing urban plans of the cities, where the conventional method would be the governments and technicians and consultants sitting together and working out how the city should look like. But here we work with the people to imagine a city where they live themselves. So that was, I think, the most beautiful part of our whole journey.
Thank you for those lovely words. And thank you, everyone. I think the importance of interdisciplinarity and collaborative learning really stood out in this episode, and I was happy to see that. And this is indeed a must when we are engaging with the future, because we need to engage with questions about desirability, about plausible futures, about probable futures. And to answer these questions, we must really engage with different knowledges, methods, and integrate disciplines. So I guess that's a lesson that I'm also going to take from this process. It was a real pleasure talking with you today. And for those who are listening, I hope that you enjoyed this episode with my dear colleagues from Nepal. If you are curious to learn more about Tomorrow Seas, we have other episodes for you to check. The last one was about our engagement in Dar es Salaam in East Africa. So I encourage you to check that. And thank you, Dilli, thank you, Rajani, thank you, Basanta, thank you, Vibek, for being here today. And thank you at home for listening. I hope to see you in the next episode. Goodbye.
For more information on the project, visit tomorrowcities.org and follow us on X, LinkedIn, and YouTube.